Hi, this is Andreas with Technically Speaking at Source Allies. Today we're going to talk about Git. Specifically, this is the second video in our series about Git. I'm going to call it Git 125. This is how to work with other people using some of the same tools that we learned before. Let me start by going through an agenda, what we're going to cover. This is a video for people who might be able to use Git to commit to their own repository, maybe can upload individual things and change files, but they're not really good at working on other people's repositories. They don't understand what it means when people ask them to fork or to submit a pull request. Some things are just getting over their heads. I want everyone to be able to work with other people using Git. So we're going to introduce the terms that are needed, the tools that are needed, and we're going to run through an example. Sound good? Okay. In each of these videos, I want to introduce at least one new resource that you can chew on. So it could just be a factoid, like the Git adoption rate that we introduced in the previous video. In this video, I'd like to talk about the Git book. It's the open source book about Git as a source control library. You can find it here at git-scm.com. It's totally open source. You can download it. You can get a PDF of it. I don't think I would recommend reading it page by page, but if you have a question about a given command, it is a really good resource for exactly how to use that command and some examples of how to do it right. Consider taking a look at the Git book. The author of the book is a great speaker, and there's a bunch of videos of him talking about Git, answering questions and tricks and tips. So do consider watching some of those videos, and if you get stuck, take a look through the book. It might have exactly what you're looking for. Okay, we're ready to dive into terminology. In order to work with other people, you need to be able to communicate with them. Previously, we introduced some terms like, I don't know, what a repository is and what Git is as a verb or maybe as like a protocol. In this video, I want to make sure we're clear on what a workspace is. A workspace is the directory where you're putting all your stuff. It has all the files from the repository. You can open up your IDE, your integrated development environment, and edit those files. It's where you make your changes. And it's also the directory where you run your Git commands. So, workspace. You might also hear it called like a working directory. But we're going to talk about that as we change. We'll run some of these commands and it'll change your workspace. So I want to make sure it's clear what I mean by that. Second, I want to talk about branches. So Git has a concept of branches, which are just sets of changes. So as you check out some code, you pull it down or you clone a repo, and as you make changes, each time you commit, you're making changes onto a branch, and you're building this like sequence of changes that eventually will diverge from everyone else's changes. So to get those changes back to everyone else, you need to merge them down, squash them down, give a pull request. There's a few ways to do it. But your branch is just a name that's associated with the changes that you've made. Other people will have their own branches with different names. There are some specially named branches. Nowadays, these are the default branches. Nowadays, we generally use main, but you could also use master. Older repositories will definitely use master, but this is just the branch that's getting deployed and that everybody is like starting with. It's the starting point. So if somebody says, hey, make sure you pull main before you make any changes, they're saying, there's new stuff in main. You should get that new stuff into your workspace before you do anything else. I'm also going to talk about remote repositories. So previously we defined your repository as like the directory and everything in it, sort of the same as your workspace. But there could be remote repositories that are other people who are sort of farther removed. They might be on the network, or it might be GitHub. Those are all remote repositories that you can track locally. So you can set up your local Git to go out and like get the changes from these other remote repositories. We're going to show you how to do that today. Of those remote repositories, one of them has a special name. It's origin. That's the remote repository that you ran the clone against in order to get your local repository. That just is the default name for the one that you cloned from. Finally, we've mentioned pull requests a couple of times. We're going to define that a little bit better. A pull request is a request to bring changes into somebody else's branch. So let's say that you type away and you make some changes and you think they're great, and you want your friend to also have those changes. You tell your friend, hey, would you mind pulling my changes into your branch so you have them as well? That's a pull request. There's a formalized way of doing it through a GitHub flow. It's not part of Git as the command line tool, but it is something we talk about all the time. We generally use GitLab or GitHub or some other tool for managing pull requests. Okay, I think we're ready to dive in. All right, so the first command I want to introduce is pull. Pull is a way to get the changes from other people in other remote repositories into your repository so you're up to date. Okay, I want to demonstrate this, so I'm going to start with an example. I have a repo that I very much like to make some changes on. Architecture, it's just a random repo, but it's locked down. You can't push branches to it. You can't make changes to the main branch. So the only way to get stuff in is going to be through a more advanced flow. So I have this thing. Let's go ahead and pull it down. I'll start by cloning it. So I'm going to go into my sandbox. Sandbox is just a directory full of other directories full of stuff I'm working on. So you might call it your documents or your developer folder. I call it sandbox. And I'm ready to clone. So we'll clone down this architecture repository. I'll go into it. And I can see that there's 8 files there. I bet there's some hidden files too. Yeah, there's a handful of files. But these files exactly match the files here. So I've cloned it down. I've got all the code. Great. What if the code changes? So that's the thing we want to simulate. So if we go back to our thing and hit refresh, oh my gosh, somebody has added this new cool code.txt. It's just a text file, but as an example, I want to show how you can use Git Pull to get those artifacts down into your local state. So I still don't have them here. You can see that. I don't have that new cool code, but I want it. So Git Pull, by default, will pull from the origin, from the branch that you're currently on. So I'm on the main branch. You can see that with the git status. Ooh, I did not spell that right. Gert. I can see I'm on the main branch. I want to get the changes from the remote main branch that I cloned from, so from origin main. To do that, I just need to do git pull. It's going to notice that there's a change, that there's some new file, and it's actually going to put it in my working directory. So my workspace has been updated. I can see it there, my new cool code. Okay, so this was a fictional example, but it shows you how you can pull. Pull has options for choosing what remote repository to pull from, what branch to pull from. It doesn't get so fine-grained that you could pull individual files. You're going to get all the stuff from a given remote, from a given branch. If you want more control to just get a couple of files or maybe even a couple of commits, there's other tools for that. I wouldn't try to use Git Pull. Okay, so the next command that you need to be introduced to in order to work with other people is branch. Branch is just an informative command to show you what branches are out there. So let's give it a go. So this is showing that I have one branch, it's main. That's the only local branch I have. You can hit Q to get out of that. It's just displaying the information in a way that's scrollable. So whenever you get stuck in one of those, you can always hit Q to get out of this display mode. If you do branch-A, you can see all the other branches from the other remotes. So right now I just have origin and my local. My local is in green, origin's in red, and you can also see that one thing points to another. So head of origin is pointing to origin main. So this origin main, head is an alias for it. But that's all there is to a branch. It just lets you see what branches exist out there. You can change the format, you can change how they're sorted, a ton of options, but for now, just knowing what branches exist, and it also highlights the branch that you're on, is helpful. It'll put a little star next to the one that you're on. So not a super complicated tool, and you can use branch. You'll probably see people using branch to make new branches. I don't think I would recommend it. I think there's a better tool for that, and that tool is a newer command in Git called switch. So switch allows you to change between branches. At the same time, it can make new ones. So I'm going to go back to that branch command, and I see that there's a Andreas Christensen patch 1. That seems like an interesting branch. I want to check it out. Switch is the way that you get those changes into your local workspace so you can check them out and see what's going on. So I'll git switch, and I've got that Andreas Christensen patch 1. I'm switching to that branch. It's set up to track origin Andreas Christensen patch 1, and I can see that I'm on the new branch. And my local files have changed. There's like a temp file there now, and I don't have my new cool code. So my workspace has been changed so that it matches this other branch. I hope that makes sense. Switch is the way that you can alter your workspace to get to one of the remote branches. It will do the magic of making sure that you have a matching branch that's set up to track that remote branch. So you didn't have to set up the tracking yourself. Git switch did it all for you. You can also use it to make a new branch. I think I'm going to do that next. So I'm going to use git switch to switch back to where it was before. If you give it a dash, just like the cd command, it'll take you to where you last were. And while I'm on main, I want to do, let's remove that cool new code. So I'm going to make a new branch. Switch C, remove cool code. So the C slash says, switch to a branch, but it's going to be a brand new one. Make me a new one and switch to it. Note that it starts with the branch you were already on. So really this is just an alias at this point. So if you do git branch, you'll see that remove cool code, it really is the same as main. I don't actually see the pointer there because it's more than just a reference, but it has all the same code as main. I'm ready to make a change. I'm going to remove that cool code. At this point, status will tell me that things have changed. I have this one deleted file, and I haven't committed yet. Let's go ahead and commit that and provide an example of how it's harder when working with other people to get your changes to go where they need to be. I want this new cool code removed. I want it to not be on my local, and also not to be on origin main. That is, I want to push that up so everyone has it. How do I do that? So first I'll make the commit. Yep, that's good stuff. Want that committed. Remove it. And I'm just going to try to push my new branch right now. I've got my remove cool code branch, and I'm going to push it right back up to origin. Unfortunately, origin is protected. They won't let me make a new branch there. And, well, maybe I can just do it straight to main. Do you think that might be possible? If I go back to main, oh man, and then I want to, I don't know, just update it here. Remove it. I can make a commit on main locally because I can do whatever I want locally. It's my computer. But now when I push main, oh, that's also protected. How do I possibly get my changes where I need them to be? I'm stuck. The next thing I want to introduce is forking. So if I've got my cool new branch and I want to get it somewhere that's pretty well locked down, most of your online code repositories like GitHub or GitLab are going to give you a way to fork. A fork is just a copy of the remote repository. So I'll go into my browser. I've got this guy and I want to fork it. So let's make a new fork. Okay, so what we need to do is fork this repository. You can go into GitHub from the architecture. This is the repository. Click fork. And here I'm going to fork it into my personal organization, the Andreas Christensen organization. And I'm going to have full access once I fork it, because it's going to be a brand new copy, and it'll be a copy that I own. So I could push branches, and I could make pull requests. I could push right to main. It's not the same architecture that Troop 71 has. This is my copy of it. So I can go to town, but if in order to get them the changes I have, I'm going to have to give them a pull request. Okay, so in order to make the pull request happen, I need to know something about remotes. In essence, I need to let my personal computer know that, hey, there's a new fork out here, and this is where you should push some changes. So I'll grab the link here, got it copied, and now I'm ready to do some Git remote stuff. First, I just want to see what remotes I've got out there. Looks like it's just origin. Git remote will list the remote repositories that your local copy knows about. You can also do a git remote -v, and it'll give you some more details. Sometimes it's useful to see exactly what the URI for that resource is. You can name it origin. That's the default name when you clone. But Git remote will allow you to rename things too. So I want to rename origin to upstream. So once you have done some renaming, Git remote -v gives you a little more context. So just seeing the word upstream may not tell you exactly where it's going to go. This also lets you add new remotes. So I just made a fork. I've got the URI for that fork in my clipboard. I'm going to add as a remote. You notice that I'm calling it origin. The reason I'm doing that is because in my head, origin is the default place I'm going to push to. So if I can't push to this upstream thing because it's all locked down, I'll make myself a fork, call it origin, and just keep pushing to there. And from there, I can open pull requests to get a maintainer to merge my code in. All right. So now we have extra stuff. It's more than just the old origin. I've got my new origin, which it looks like is the wrong one. That's the troop 71. I need to git remote remove. So you can also remove them that way and see that it's gone. Why was I unable to copy that? I thought I had in my clipboard, but I guess I didn't. Let's try this again. Oh, that looks better. And now my git remote v should show me the right stuff. So I tend to use the -v a lot just to make sure that I understand what it's an alias to. So the previous tools you've learned with committing and pushing still work fine. You can commit just like normal, but now if you have multiple remotes, you can choose which one to push to. So just a reminder, I'm on remove cool code. I've already committed my thing. If you look at the git log, you can see my commit. Remove it. I want to get that up into GitHub and then open a pull request so that everyone has my change. So the next thing I want to do is push. In this case, I want to push specifically to origin. You'll note that origin here is my fork. By default, it's going to push the same branch to the same branch name. So it sees remove cool code, and it makes a new branch on the remote repository that is my fork, remove cool code. It even gives me this handy dandy link to open a pull request. On the pull request, you can choose which of the upstreams to put it to. So you might just want to work locally some more, have your own pull request. You might have 1,000 different people that any one of those repos could get a pull request. That's sort of how the Linux kernel works. In this case, I'll just send it up to troop 71. So I make the pull request. I can review exactly what files changed. Yep, I am indeed deleting that one file. And the maintainer of that repo could potentially merge it. So we went through here how to use Git remote. We talked about the workflow for making a fork. Going back in time, we talked a little about pulling and about branching and about switching. These are the tools that you need to work with other people in an intelligent way using Git. If you can only add, commit, push, that doesn't get you anyone else's change. So with what you can do now, you can clone a repo, make some changes that you want to make, commit them onto a branch. We have the concept of branches. Make a new branch, commit them onto that branch. And then when you push them up, you don't just push them to origin, where you pulled the code from. You could push them to your own fork. And from your own fork, you can choose to open a pull request or to share a link to that code to somebody else, get other people involved, and get your code out to the masses. And once the origin repo is changed, you can do git pull as many times as you want to get the fresh code. I would recommend doing a git pull before making any new changes. When you have this like new unit of work, a new thing that you want to do, go to main, go to master, whatever the default branch is, do a git pull, make sure you've got the most up-to-date code, and then git switch.c to create a new branch, and go nuts. You can make all your changes. Okay, so that's the new workflow. Slightly different from the old one, but it allows you to work with other people. We should probably mention the elephant in the room. If you're watching this and you know a little about Git, or maybe you've been burned before, you probably wonder what we should do about conflicts. What if other people altered the same files I altered? So I pulled down the repository, made some changes in a file. Other people changed that file, and it got back into the repository. Now I want my changes to be there too. If we're stepping on each other's toes, we have a merge conflict. We both want to alter the same file. There's ways to resolve that. We might be able to cherry pick something or rebate something. We might have to manually use the git merge tool to choose line by line what to do with each one. We're not going into that here, but that's a caveat. That's something you should be aware of. It's going to bite you eventually. For now, just have a coworker help you. Talk to the people who created the conflict, or if you're creating the conflict, talk to the people who already got in there and figure out what you can do to help and work together. There's going to be people around who know how to resolve conflicts. I also didn't talk about authentication. I'm using SSH keys to clone all of these repositories. That's my preferred way of doing things. I didn't talk about how to make a key. Also didn't talk about how to set up Git, to set your email and username. Didn't talk about signing commits either. Those are all things you can do. There's a lot of cool guides online, but we're glazing over it because we just want to get people to the point where they can work together, work with others. Oh, that was a lot. I've been talking fast, but we're at the best part, the part that I care the most about. That's the cheer. So, on 3, we're going to say, pitter patter, let's get at her. All right, so get them hot, heat up those hands, and get ready to cheer. On 3. 1, 2, 3, pitter patter, let's get at her. Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, this has been Andreas Christensen for Technically Speaking at Source Allies. If you've got a topic that you want to see covered, please let me know. Comment down below. You can check out sourceallies.com to learn more about us. And thank you for watching this video. See you next time.